Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching this. Today, I'm interviewing the members of Echolyn, including Glenn Rosenstein, who is also partaking. He mastered, right? Is that correct? Yes.
Yeah,
And
and mix.
yeah,
Mixed and
mixed.
mastered the new album by Echolyn, which will be released at what time or what day or
March 7th.
March 7th. Okay, yeah, and it's called Time Silent Radio. 7 and 2. It's two separate albums, but it's I we'll delve into it. I just have to start off by saying like it's a phenomenal album. Like
Thank you.
I think you guys ever since your debut album, I think you've never like missed on an album. I just think everything you've released, I'm very confident. Like it's just there's something I'll enjoy from it, and I just
So
yeah.
you're saying that we did miss on the first album?
No, I think it's a different album. It's a different album. I love it. I love it. I think you guys have grown, but
I
I
think
mean I
I think
like
you're saying
Shades and yeah.
I think he's saying you missed Ray.
Oh yeah, I do.
Uh,
Brett and I have never missed.
No.
Uh,
Yeah.
Reading between the lines correctly.
Yeah. Of
That's
course.
a great compliment, though. Thank you.
Oh
And
yeah.
we can honestly say that's always our goal.
Mm,
We don't want to repeat ourselves, and we always want to progress forward in the truly progressive sense. Like, don't be
yeah.
who you were. You already were that.
Yeah.
Go to the next place you're supposed to go.
Mm,
And we
yeah.
push ourselves to do that.
Totally. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of if you're a fan of like May or stuff like that, you'll definitely like some of the longer tunes, I think. Water in Our Hands and Time Has No Place. I think there's some I always think of Emerald Garden as almost being kind of like a May kind of song. It would have fit perfectly on there, but it still like pushes into new territory. And I think it's really, really phenomenal. And I think the last 6 minutes of Water in Our Hands, I think the whole song is stunning, but just that last part just yeah, I'm still dissecting the album, but it moves me so much. Like I feel such an emotional pull
I
and
keep trying to
especially because of just your long history. Yeah, sorry. What was it?
I didn't mean to interrupt, but keep trying to convince Brett to release the last 6 minutes of that. It's
Mm,
just that is just some of the most gorgeous work that
mm,
these guys have done. But
yeah.
we're thinking about, and actually we'll make it happen, but doing a video of that section
Mm,
of the song to promote the full song and then both albums. And I think Glenn's right in saying that we should do that. I think it's one of those things that as a songwriter you hope to touch every once in a while, and I think we lucked out and we got it, in
mm.
that moment and throughout other spots. But I think we really got it on this part.
Yeah. And I love the dichotomy of the
Yeah.
I think Brett, you're singing like I don't know the lyric, but it's like everything goes on forever, and then Ray's like, no, it doesn't. And it's this kind of dichotomy. And I just oh, it's like that pull. It reflects like everything in our hearts, that kind of contrast. And I just think
Um,
it's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so glad you recognize that. It means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have so many questions that I'm no way I'm going to get through it all. But totally let me know whenever I'll be it's an honor to speak with you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'll just start off with sort of a more general question, and well, yeah, I know Jordan, you played on Cowboy Poems Free for parts of it in May. I guess specifically for you, like, is it kind of surreal to be in the band after 25 years? I don't know if there was any time in between where you were working with them, but
I've kind of never not been in touch with the band. Like it's not like, we finished Cowboy Poems, and like stopped communicating until the session that I overdubbed some stuff for May and then stopped communicating until we started talking about, I've played on I don't know how many projects with Brett that he's produced and, of his own and for other people. And I think when the music for this started coming together again, like I can't say this for sure, but like I think I was kind of like in the mix, not from the very beginning, but like as it started to come together as like a new Echolyn project and kind of the evolution of relationships and personnel happened over the years. It just kind of I think it made sense to all of us. And then when I came in for the first session, because we did the drums over the course of I don't know how many sessions, but I would say several. Uh, it was like why wouldn't we do it this way and have it be this group of people? It just felt felt extremely musical and extremely natural and exciting. So
Wow.
from where I was sitting anyway, maybe they hated it and just kind of went along with it begrudgingly. But you know,
No, I mean, and I've said this before. We wouldn't have called the band as Echolyn without Jordan being in it, because Chris and I started writing songs, and we weren't even thinking about an Echolyn thing. We just wanted to write together because we enjoy it. Even when we got Ray back involved, still. But then, we talked about it, the three of us, without Jordan, and we're like, we should ask him. And I think we could make this into an Echolyn record, because obviously Chris Ray and I we're the songwriters. We've been the same songwriters since 1989, and having Jordan on board, only solidified the fact that it should be under that moniker. And even having Glenn back on board too, it just was, the 30-year, time period that we hadn't worked with him before just came back so naturally. And it's an Echolyn record.
But the thing also about that is that um, it's an Echolyn record, but Franklin, kind of as you said earlier, it has evolved. I mean, we've all evolved individually. Even though these guys have stayed together through all of that time, the remarkable difference over this period of time since the last time we collectively worked, which is quite some time ago, it's pretty hard to believe where it actually led. And there's something so almost poetic about being able to see it, that early on, and then get involved again all those years later and kind of have that kind of historical perspective, but yet everybody's bringing so many new things to the table. And honestly, that's the reason why I was thrilled to have this role, which was kind of different than, the role that I took when we did As the World. And it was, to me, more of a challenge in some ways to keep up with the improvements and the changes and all, everything that's kind of transpired. But the challenge itself um, was remarkable, and hopefully is well appreciated by the people who listen.
Glenn, would you mind, Glenn, just sort of like delineating the differences of, like, because I know a lot of people probably don't even know per se what the role of a producer or a mix engineer, in your case, two completely different things. What was your role on the first record compared to where we are now?
Well, I've just as briefly as possible, I've been a record producer for over 40 years, and my start was as an engineer, then a mixer. And the mixing component of it, the engineering component, is a little bit more of a technical, hands-on kind of thing. I mean, I'm sitting actually in a studio right now, one of my studios, with a recording console and all of that. The production side of it, especially the role that I took with Echolyn on As the World, was half creative, half business. There was a component of budget. There was a component of logistics. There was, a record producer is almost like a film producer and is also like a film director, you know. So you've got the business component of it, interfacing with the label, dealing with a lot of the financial, a lot of the hotels. I had people who worked for me, but we were, in transit. We did part of As the World in Pennsylvania in their rehearsal studio. We did some of it here in Nashville, which is where I am right now. There was a lot of that kind of stuff on mixing the record with Brett. I can't undo being a producer because I still have that mind, but following Brett's lead and um, and certainly Ray and Chris's lead was an enormous amount of fun for me. But it was also, to Brett's point, it was a real challenge because I'm not the producer on the record. I'm not the one who's making that type of creative decision. I really had to listen not only with my brain and my heart, but with my ear to what the desires of the other three, four members of the band were. And I figured I wanted to get in really, really good with Jordan. So I made sure that the drums were really too fun. Once I knew I had Jordan on my side, the rest was a piece of cake. But I don't know if that really describes the differentiation between it. But yeah, the mixing thing, I worked to the satisfaction hopefully to the satisfaction of, the four other people who were in the band. And as a producer, you do have more clout, weight in the decision making stuff. And at times, I like the more subservient role. There's something kind of really fun about not being the boss and listening to people who are well educated and can really put a great record together. And, I'm not just saying that because we're here right now. I really admire Brett as a producer. He's great to work with. And he's one of the few people that I, as a producer, could actually work for and feel that I'm taking away something more than I brought into the game. So fuck
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and just a public thanks, because Franklin, this also was something that Glenn did. And Glenn, this was kind and generous on your part. The fact that Echolyn is our hobby and we all work day jobs, we needed to get to Nashville to be in the room with Brett and Glenn to hear, listen, finalize mixes. And Glenn opened up his home to us for 3 days so we could literally fly down on a long weekend and get 90 some minutes of music checked off and done, because otherwise to do that would have been so difficult and challenging. And like Glenn said, you want to have every brain and every set of ears in the room together because it's a group project. It always has been.
And by the way, real quickly, acknowledging that Brett is the producer doesn't denigrate at all the massive contributions that everybody else had. This was the most, I've done a lot of records in my career, and this was absolutely one of at least, of maybe 2 or 3 other records that the partnership component of it was so intertwined and in a really, really positive way. I know that post this record, I have been beating Brett continuously for us to do more music collectively. So there's my pitch as well. I just had about the best time record in many, many years with these guys. It was great.
Yeah, it was a great reunion. Great way to do the album.
Yeah, absolutely. It, you can tell. I mean, every note and everything is so well placed, so meticulously constructed, and it just, I think that's always been something that I've appreciated. It's not like willy-nilly. I'm just, everything is placed where it needs to be. I do have this kind of a random question. I don't know if this will go anywhere, but so my uncle, he went to North Penn High School, and was in a band with Dave Venziel. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. I know Dave.
And they recorded in your, I don't know if it exists anymore, but your barn studio in West Point.
Yep.
And
it's there.
Yeah, and he might have opened up at DJ Bananas. I was told to say that.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Yeah, Dave. In between when I was in a cover band with Ray and a couple of the other guys, and we broke up for about a year. And I went out and I bought a 16-track reel-to-reel tape deck, and I got the studio kind of like in the direction of recording, which I've always been interested in. And Dave was one of those guys that came over as a drummer to play on some of my stuff as I was learning the process. And I think he did bring somebody else over there, and he recorded a song or two, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And Dave is a really good friend with my younger brother, Tim, and Chris Busby, who are about 3 or 4 years younger than myself. So yeah, that's all there. True.
We all went to elementary school together.
Yep.
And we all went to the same middle school together. And then I left. My parents pulled me out of that school and sent me to a private school. And the long story short of joining the band was I was in the mall selling clothing at American Eagle, and in walks Brett's dad and his brother Tim. And Tim's like, "Is that Chris Busby? I remember that guy used to play keyboards in 5th grade." And so he just comes up to me and says, "Do you still make music?" I'm like, "Yeah, I go to the University of Arts. I'm living at my parents' house right now." He's like, "Yeah, my brother needs a keyboard player for his band." And then stupidly, I avoided Brett for about 4 or 5 phone calls because I kept thinking, I don't know if I want to be in a band. I knew about Narcissus, which was a great cover band, but I didn't want to play covers. And then when I finally took Brett's call, he's like, "Yeah, I don't want to do covers. I want to do originals." And I was like, "Oh, well, that changes everything," because I'm a composition and theory major. I would love to write songs with a band.
Yeah.
So there you have it. So it's that same connection back to Dave Enziel and Tim Cole.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's funny is my uncle, he didn't actually introduce me to Echolyn. I got into you guys on my own. And then my dad, who is from Philly, his side of the family, they were like, "Do you know this band?" And my uncle was like, "Oh yeah." And then it kind of went off. But it's just funny how he didn't introduce me to you guys. I just found you guys on my own. But
Nice.
yeah,
cool.
yeah, totally. And you mentioned Chris, composition and that kind of stuff. Well, that's actually where I'm going to school for composition. That's what I want to do, and I just I think it's super cool. I'm kind of I had a question actually about counterpoint because I'm kind of studying at the moment, Fuchs.
I have that book. Yes.
Yeah. Because I think that there's some songs in particular. I mean, like Georgia Pine and Never Garden, those kind of songs, that use this counterpoint. And I personally, it's something that I just obsess over. I love it. I just think it's such a cool sound. And I tried to do it, but I don't know like how your approach to it. That's kind of what I was going to ask, but yeah.
It's like musical math. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But I think a lot of it is when Brett and I have an original idea for a song, the other person then usually listens to the first person's idea and either A, writes a complementary part to it, which sometimes is counterpoint, but sometimes not. Sometimes it's a chord progression with a melody or vice versa. And then just the fun part of just saying, so where can that song go? But being really careful not to be cliche, not to be derivative, like sort of to say, like, does this sound and work like it's something new and fresh? I was telling some of my students, they were asking about the band about the album last week, because we're back to school now in the new year. And they're like, your album's coming out soon. And I told them that we had a 29-minute song. And they said, why do you do that? Like a teenager can't fathom why you would write a 29-minute song. And I said, you have to think of it this way. It's art to us. Like, we're not worried about the radio. We're not worried about people loving or liking or hating or whatever. We're just writing songs for ourselves. And then the bonus round is we do get to put it out, and we do actually have a fan base around the world who does care. Yeah. So back to your counterpoint, that's just always been a part of who we are. We do it with our vocal harmonies too, where it's like the voice is oftentimes considered another instrument. Ray does a phenomenal job on this album, I think, of like showcasing his voice as a singer, but as an attitude, as a color, as an emotion. Like it's like it's realizing that your voice is something you speak with and sing with, but it's amazing what you can then bring to an album project.
I always look forward to hearing a Ray melody over top of something. A lot of times I won't work on a vocal part because I'm like, I'm just throwing this to Ray. But I mean, like the end of Radio Waves is a great melody and also there's another one in Cul-de-sacs and Tunnels in the heavier parts and those big choruses. Yeah. I mean, he sang them, right in the other room over there, and it's just like, yep, there it is. He comes up with great rhythms, really interesting melodies that are just immediately I recognize it. It's like, oh, I've heard this before. Like this is some sort of a blues or it works great. It always works great. It's always about melody. It's not about the math of things or making it cool. It's always about, even when we were dabbling in 12-tone stuff, it's like, does this have a nice melody to it?
Yeah. Can you follow this? Can you listen? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I love what Brett said about Ray. We laugh sometimes because Ray will sing a vocal part and we'll laugh because we're loving it. And I think Ray thinks we're laughing at it. And it's like, no. I love that because I would never have sung that. And yet you came up with that part because that's what you hear in your head. And that's what makes it brilliant and original. Because he goes to places that most people would never go. And it's like, yeah, but that's what makes it art. That's what makes it Echolyn.
I think like that's a classic example of the beginning line of Radio Waves.
Yeah.
This feels dead. It just, as soon as I heard it, I went to that note. Yeah. And it was like, is that okay? Like, oh, yeah, fucking great.
Yeah.
We had completely different chords in that section, and I was sitting downstairs and Ray was there, and I'm like, let's try these chords, and he just came up with that melody. I'm like, that's it. We're done.
Quality.
I mean, in my mind, I'm like, it's just perfect, and it was great. Totally directed it.
Yeah, the falsetto, and mixed with the other stuff. It's super cool. Yeah.
Yep.
And something I noticed as well is there's kind of like some Easter eggs thrown in. Like I think like in Silent Years, you reference Best Regards, and I think War Jazz is even mentioned like at the very end or something.
Mm-hmm.
And cul-de-sacs and tunnels, which kind of almost sounds like a When Sunday Spills kind of almost similar to that, like mentions the spilling verb.
Yep.
And I wonder, like, is there maybe you're not going to answer, but are there other Easter eggs like throughout the album that maybe I
Yeah.
failed to
Yes.
see? Okay,
The
yeah.
both albums are full of Easter eggs.
Keep listening. Keep listening.
I'll keep listening. I don't want to know. I just want to.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I just want to know at least that they're there.
Oh yeah.
There's one backward masking of Brett's bank account.
Whoever finds it gets to retire.
Yeah.
No, but Franklin, that's as a listener, that's awesome that you're uncovering that, because yes, that's part of. Well, and it's like the classic example of we're still Echolyn, so we're allowed to go back and reference who we were then, who we are now, and we're allowed to tie those things together because it's us. It's still us. We're not ripping anyone off. We're just reminding people, like, remember that song, remember that moment, remember that place.
Yeah. But also the lyric itself, I am for now what I am today. It's just the perfect lyric to have at that part at that time. And then you're talking about 30 years between us, which 30th anniversary is that. I don't know. It's cool. I mean, I've only been with this album for a month. I'm sure there's more to uncover. There's a lot more to uncover, but
you've uncovered a lot, but definitely keep listening. There's more.
Totally. And that's what I like about your albums. It requires multiple listens. And I hope people know that, like, you have to be open. And I mean, I as long as there's that interest that keeps you coming back to it, and there's so much, it's like there's so much to uncover, so much to unpack. It's really phenomenal. And I wanted to ask Ray about, because you're playing bass on this album, and I know you've played bass on previous stuff. And I love also the little behind the scenes videos that you've posted, Brett, about all this stuff. It's really cool. I wanted to ask, how is your I guess approach to writing bass lines different from Tom Hyatt? Because I know Tom Hyatt's kind of more of a Jacko kind of guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I guess I approach it more as a lead singer. Sometimes I do play melodies that won't work, and I'll be honest, I lend a lot of the credit to Brett. A lot of his the work with Katie and his solo albums, he's been playing bass on those albums, and I've listened to those a lot, and it's helped me become a better quote unquote bass player rather than like a singer playing the bass. It took a lot of time. I came up with a lot of different parts, and I would bring them to the studio, and Brett and I would go through them, and a lot of the parts worked, and some of the parts didn't. So we worked together to find the best of both worlds, of the parts that I brought and really what should be in the song. I don't consider myself a bass player. A guy who knows how to play the bass. So I kind of approached it that way, humbly and with open ears.
To Ray's humble thing, he's a great bass player. He's got great feel. When he plays, I don't have to worry about editing it to death or anything at all. He just, he's playing with Jordan. Same thing with Jordan. It's just, it just works out great.
By the time I got the tracks, and that's pretty much everything is done. I remember one of the first comments I had with Brett was like, "Who's the bass player on this?" And no, certainly no insult at all to Tom, because I worked with him on As the World, but the pocket that that Jordan and Ray established, that is so fundamental to how every one of those songs work. Melody's important, of course. I mean, they all have to work in proportion, but the pocket on this stuff was just remarkable. And whether the end listener understands, how that actually works or not, they feel it on a very, very primitive level. And I think there's a lot about this record that will speak to people in that way. Very visceral, very, very visceral album. So, I didn't realize, I knew Jordan was a great drummer. I didn't realize how evolved Ray's playing had actually gotten. And that lock is just pretty. Uh, I know, like I'm just saying, oh, this is great, this is great, this is great, but it is truly actually great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But
I know.
Glenn, you're right. A pocket and a groove is what sells the song because it's about feeling and emotion. If it doesn't feel right, you're not going to stick around and keep listening.
And you may not be able to identify it verbally, but there is that visceral, that gut thing, whether you're in Nashville doing line dancing or you're, downtown Lower East Side of Manhattan and, listening to some reggae track or whatever, that's the universal kind of aspect of music and how, in my opinion, how it communicates. And if a band can't get that done, thankfully this was rich and deep in exactly that. So
I know in the past, when we would go in to do an album, we would always play together and write together. And that really helped with Tom and the former drummer because they would be in the pocket together, writing the parts together. Writing this album, it was just the three of us, Brett, Chris, and I. And like I said, I would come up with parts that I thought would work. But once Jordan put the drums down, I would have to tie in with the kick, the snare, which changed a lot of the changed my what's the word? Changed my direction of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Well, and with Brett's help as well, you gotta get in with the kick. Like, oh yeah, I wasn't even paying attention to that. I was thinking this. So it really helped to sit and listen to the kick and snare, and that helped push what I was playing as well.
Also, I would like to add that I play with a lot of different bass players and in a lot of different styles, and I think everybody on this call can correct me if they disagree, but I feel like you can sum up most bass players into two categories. It's like either they're like a parts player, or they're like like a low end bass player. Where it's like they're not provide like the latter being like not going to play like a super memorable part, but it's going to support the music in this frequency range, which is also incredibly important. They're not, one is not better than the other, but people who are like bass players who get really into parts sometimes lose, like they lose sight of the direction of the function of the instrument sometimes. And I think Ray just did a phenomenal job of marrying both, because my favorite thing listening to bass players is when I forget it's there, and then something in my brain goes, what's the bass player doing right now? And I clue into what's going on in the bass, and it's like, holy fuck, like there's like so much great shit going on right now that did not distract me from what is like the truly, like from what's going on in the vocals, what's going on in the lead lines and the keys and the guitar, whatever I'm listening to. I have played for a long time with a great songwriter named Becca Stevens, and she uses a bass player named Chris Tordini, who's that way. You listen to any Becca record, and you're never gonna notice what Chris is doing until you decide to notice it, and then you can't take your ears off of it. And I feel like Ray achieved something very similar on these
Thank you, Jordan.
Really exciting and awesome to listen to. Well done.
Thank
Ray.
you.
Completely agree. Yep.
Thank you.
where's the hatred? I want to hear hatred,
Also say now let's get some real shit about Ray.
We're too old. We're too old for hate.
Yeah, it takes too much energy to be mad all the time.
Makes me sleepy.
Yeah, right. I need a nap.
I will say in your live performances, though, you have the energy of like a death metal band. I will say that. Like, it's almost.
I always equated us when we used to play all the time. I always equated us to like the Who live at Leeds, like two singers. I always felt like Pete. Like I just wanted to put a work jumpsuit on and just like. And Ray was always there too, and that's like. Whenever we played together, I always was like, let's go on. This is live at Leeds. Let's do this. You know what I mean? So it's funny you brought that up. Yeah. I never thought about like prog capes or just like,
No.
dude, I just was like,
Yeah.
You would look great with a cape, though, Brett.
thanks,
And
man.
just a cape.
Yes.
Obviously.
What we did when
What
he
else? What other kind of cape is there?
you know,
What's that, Glenn?
that's kind of what we did when Brett was here mixing. It was capes only. In my studio, it's capes only.
Oh,
How the magic happens.
Clothing optional capes.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because the thing we started experiencing as a live band years ago is people then didn't want us to open for them because even if we only got 30 minutes or 45 minutes, our audience was going to get a 30 or a 45-minute in your face. We are Echolyn. Thanks for having us. Have a great night. And all of a sudden it started turning into, how come no one wants us to open for them anymore? And it's like Brett said, because we always brought the house every time.
I'm going to tell this story for the record because I'm tired of it not being out there. But we played a show in 2000 with Jordan at the TLA in Philadelphia. We were asked to play by this guy named Jim Patulski, who was managing a band called Transatlantic. And we went, they asked us to play because it was a home show for us. And we hadn't played for a long time because this was after we took a break. And we went and we fucking killed. And we were supposed to play for 45 minutes. And at 28 minutes, we started noticing that our monitors were going off. So I look out, I'm looking at the monitor guy. I'm like, what's going on? And he's doing this to me. And I'm like, I look at my clock. I'm like, we've got at least 15 minutes left.
He's got 3 more songs.
Yeah. So then we go into the next tune. Monitors are now off. And I'm looking out at the house. My buddy who does all our live shows, Joe Stout, was doing sound. He's blocking the console as the TLA FOH, the front house people, are trying to get in and turn the PA off. He's blocking them. He's pushing them away. And we're playing, and we got done the next tune as they kind of got in and started shutting things down. And literally, I don't use that term often, the guys on the side of the stage are walking over, picking our gear up and carrying it off of the stage towards the back door to get us off the stage. Now I'm like, we're angry. I'm trying to get the stuff off, and I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, find Jim Patulski. I want to talk to him. Well, Pete Travalis, a bass player for Marillion, comes around. He walks by me as I'm carrying my amps, and he goes, "Hey, mate, good show. A little too good." And he just keeps walking by me. And I was just like, fuck you. You know what I mean? And that's the last time we ever played at the TLA. And that was a home place. The main sort of like stage matters, like, you guys are never playing here again. And we had to go out. It was raining outside.
Yeah,
we took our gear out.
Yeah, they threw us in an
horrible.
alleyway in the rain with our gear. You're done. You're done. Off the stage. Get out. And we're like, we had a 45-minute set. We didn't even get 32 minutes.
I went around the front door looking for their manager to confront him.
Wow.
And he was AWOL, couldn't find him. So anyway, I wanted to tell that story because it's live at Leeds. That's what I think,
And we took playing live very seriously.
Yeah.
We wanted people to get a great show. It was just disheartening to think that our great show was a little too good.
Yeah.
So we were shut down, literally.
True story.
Are you guys going to be playing either? Sorry to take your gig, Franklin. Are you guys going to be taking any kind of live to support this record? That's one thing we never actually spoke about, or if we did, it was peripherally. But do you have any plans for a release party or any kind of?
We don't have any live plans for release parties or anything at all. I mean, it's there, and we've certainly been fortunate to have offers to play. I mean, I'd like to do one more European tour, one more, before I call it a day. But right now, I think we're all focused on this record, promoting the hell out of it as we can. I'm working on Tiny Star video right now, and just really for the next bunch of months. Just get this thing out there. I'm really hoping we can get together and do the end of Water in Our Hands, a video for that, like a performance video, and just see what we got. If something we would have to figure it out.
Yeah, and again, man, this is not me trying to put you on the spot, which means obviously I am. Uh, but it would be great to see you guys play live.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It really would.
It's been since April 2010. And that
Yeah.
was another one. We opened up for this guy, a band called The Sin, who was the
I'll be right back.
original singer for a band that Chris Squire was in back in the day. And I was hired as a guitar player for that band via another guy, Francis Dunnery. And we were headlining, and then they were like, "Hey, Brett, can you get your band to come out and play?" And I was like, "Okay."
Is that what you really want?
Yeah, so
Birds.
I mean, we were beat up pretty bad as far as learning this other person's songs and just basically getting it exactly right, which is great work. It was awesome. But by the time we went on, I mean, it was again the Who live at Leeds, and we got done that set. The crowd was just flipping out. There's video of it or film of it
On
actually.
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, and I went downstairs. Francis was down there, and the main guy. And Francis was like, "You bastard, you bastard." He's like, "You used up our audience." I'm like, "Yeah, I told you,
Yeah. You wanted us to play.
Wow.
So it's another true story.
Yeah.
That was the last time we played.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Glenn. Obviously I would.
15 years ago, man. 15 years.
I know.
Yeah.
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 Come on, old men. Come on.
But
Yeah.
Sorry, Franklin. Sorry, we were cutting you off. Go
No,
ahead.
no, it's okay. I agree with Glenn 100%. I think it would be super cool to see you guys live. Of course, I know obviously since this isn't the main your main job, it's hard, right? But I think, I know there are people out there. It's not, who would relish in that. And you mentioned also earlier the European tour, which I know you did one for The End Is Beautiful, and I've always been like curious about that. I don't know, like because I can only find performances of you in America, but yeah.
That was that was a bucket list. We just always wanted to play in Europe.
Mm.
And we had Brett talk a little bit about the connections. I mean, we have distributors over there who were selling our product.
Yeah, there was a guy named Rob Palman who,
yes,
I think he managed a bunch of bands over there, but he was a fan, and he put the whole thing. He and I put the whole thing together. We got a bus. We traveled around. We were there for what, Ray? 15 days.
17 days.
Yeah, and it was great. We played everywhere from central England all the way down to Rome. Drove all over. We were in Germany. Crowds were just great. Went to the Netherlands. Yeah,
Belgium.
Switzerland. Amazing. Yep. Yeah, really, really, really fun and hard to do, but it was great. Yeah.
No, that's all.
Franklin, I wanted to bring this up because the last time we've played, those last shows have really always been about that album you mentioned, The End Is Beautiful. We've never played anything off of our 2012 release and off of I Heard You Listening, and those two albums for me represent a big maturity change in how not only we write, but also how we play. And this album is another one of those markers in it. I feel sad that we haven't been able to play any of that material because it is more of the way that we are now, obviously because it's more current, but it exemplifies, I think, a more mature way of writing and playing. And it would be sad not to be able to play some of those songs. I have dreams about it, but you never know.
Wow. I agree with you 100%. Like, I think The End Is Beautiful was kind of like pushing into a new direction, I think, with like certain songs. And then I think the self-titled, which for me, the new album, I don't feel comfortable evaluating among your whole discography. I mean, there's no point, but I think the self-titled, I think, is like every song. It's just, I hesitate to say perfection because I don't know, but I think it's like literally a masterpiece. And just a phenomenal album. And I Heard You Listening as well, like beautiful, beautiful songs, which also kind of, there's a maturity, as you said. And I guess I wanted to ask about like, what would you say, was there a particular thing or course of events that brought about that change? Because it's not the same as Suffocating the Bloom. It's not the same as the World. I mean, it's you can tell, like, yeah, it's the same guys, but it just there's a maturity.
Yeah, there's a I think for everybody that's a creative person, you find your voice eventually. If you love what you do, you care about the craft, and if you stay with it. And it didn't come easy to me. I mean, I see somebody like a Kurt Cobain
Hmm.
finding it right off the bat, and then that's it. But it took me a long time until I found that. I don't think it wasn't until maybe May I started to feel like I was
Hmm.
finding something that was authentic in myself. And I think finding that spot where you feel it's you is varied throughout anybody that's a songwriter or an artist, and I think that's part of it. So those albums for me are like, they're like, okay, for me at least, I've found a spot where I feel like I'm being authentic. I don't know with you guys, if you agree or not, but I don't know.
The thing I've learned is I've learned to get out of the way of myself,
Yep.
and I've also learned to get out of the way of my bandmates. So when a song needs to become what it's supposed to be, you can't be partial to a part that you heard in your head. And it's like, yeah, but that part was the part. It's like, yeah, but maybe it doesn't belong in this song, or maybe it was there to get you to the song, but that part maybe doesn't have to live on the album. And so I think we also, all of us, going back to, like you said, End is Beautiful, especially, because I think that was a major paradigm shift. We started embracing melodies more everywhere. So, not just a great vocal melody with all this other music underneath it. It was like great guitar melodies, great keyboard melodies, great vocal melodies. And the concept of melody, again, not being necessarily predictable, but very Echolyn. Our melodies are us. Oftentimes, I think people use the word Americana, like we have that kind of Americana sound.
Hmm.
But when we get out of the way of our own head of what I think this is supposed to be, where Brett has a great part, and I'm like, you know what? I don't need to play a part over that. I'm going to put lush chords underneath that because that's going to elevate his part even more. Everyone might mention, oh my God, that guitar part's so great. And you stop and listen. It's kind of, Jordan, what you talked about, like forgetting the bass is there and then remembering the bass is there.
Right.
And then you go back on listen 12 and you're like, whoa, check out those freaking cool chords underneath that guitar part. It's like, yeah, it's all there to elevate the song. And that's a hard thing to do because that has to do with your ego. You have to learn to check yourself at the door and say, this isn't about me. This is about us.
Chris makes a great point, and as an observer, not only of Echolyn, but a lot of other artists that I've worked with over a period of a long time. As you get older, Franklin, the need to be right really changes, and it's remarkable. Some of those things that you counted on to be the driving force inside of you that want to be right, that attitude of like, it's my way, or, which breaks up really great bands early on. The ones that are able to sustain these really long careers and do some of their best work in the middle or even toward the end of their career, you don't really feel that need anymore to prove your point. And what winds up happening is when you do sublimate yourself to some degree or another, other kinds of magic that you could not have anticipated actually happens. You would not have been able to teach me what I just told you 30 years ago. But in the life experience that everybody on this call has, and I've seen it replicated time and time and time again, a lot of the work I get asked to do are legacy artists. And those artists, some of whom you might recognize by name, they have changed remarkably. Some may have say, oh, they lost their heat in their older age. He or she is not the same, but they found that key, that certain thing in understanding the collaborative nature of certainly what a band is all about. And watching, these guys, not like a parent, but certainly as an outsider and then back in again, watching these guys mature in the way that they interacted with, they could never have made the record we just made at the time we did as the world. And it wasn't because of talent. It was absolutely because of their ability to really understand each other's roles. And the give and the take was absolutely there. I thought As the World was a fabulous record, but it's still 30 plus years or however many years of age it is. And the maturity process that you're hearing, Franklin, in this project, I just think it has a lot to do with that. It's how you grow when you get when you're no longer in your 20s or 30s. And the things that are really important are not so much my part's going to go here, but man, what could these guys do to amplify and exemplify some of the things, that we're working on anyway.
Wow. Thank
That's
you.
my observation.
Yeah. No,
I
sorry. You can go. Yeah.
just wanted to add, I know I've been in and out of the band, for 20 something years, but I've always been a fan since before I was in the band. And I observed all the same things, and I agree that there was like a turning point in the timeline that you're talking about. And one thing I tell myself as far as like making decisions on gigs or in the studio, and I also try to impart in my students when it seems important. I teach at a university down here. So one of the phrases I use is, play like you have nothing to prove but everything to lose. And I feel like that, like we watched that happen with all the Echolyn music. Like the early records, like they're awesome, but there's a lot of like a lot of the intention has to do with proving something. You can like feel it, and I feel like all 90 minutes of this music, like all the proof has been made already since before we stepped into the studio, since before any note was written for this record. All the proof was already, all the evidence was presented long before the music was written for this music. And when you can go in with that attitude, I don't have anything to prove here, but like every note has to be really intentional. And when you can be intentional about every note and you're also not trying to prove anything, you can really make some beautiful art.
Well said.
Really well put, man. Really well put.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why, thank you.
And I think you guys honestly are playing, singing better than ever. Like it's not like the performance is top notch. I think I really do think so. And yeah, it's yeah, I don't think that has like I think it's part of the I guess that bond that you have with each other and the growth and the being open to different ideas and whatnot. And I also wanted to ask, because it's kind of similar to this timeline that we're talking about, the end is beautiful till now. I noticed that you guys use a lot of sound bites. So with like the end is beautiful, that you kind of hear that on different songs, and even with this album, there's a lot of like kind of ambient noises that pop up. And I just wanted to ask about your process of, I guess, finding and selecting those.
I think. Sorry,
go ahead,
Brett.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Brett.
The end is beautiful. I had bought a little digital recorder, and I would just hear strange things, and I would just record a little bits pieces like water filling up a bottle, just little things like that. I was I still am, but way into Mike Patton and Faith No More, Mr. Bungle, Tomahawk, and he used a lot of stuff like that. And I was kind of taking a cue from him and just recording really weird things. And they happen to work for The End is Beautiful. I think with this one, we were just like the end of what is it, Brett? Is it Tiny Star? The da da ba da ba ba da da da. The little thing we recorded.
Yeah.
That's at the end of The End is Beautiful, right?
Yeah, that's just you and Chris and I.
Yeah.
At the end of, we were just working on something and we just started playing that.
Just really cool
just that moment.
mistakes.
Yeah, it was a one-time thing.
Yeah.
Hit the record button, and then Brett's like, "Oh, that would be cool to tag onto the end as a little outro to another completely different song."
Yeah.
Just to show people our spontaneous side. Like, we're zany, we're corny, we're silly, we have bad days, we get angry at each other, but at the same time, we also have this magic when we're in a room together. We're always making music, and sometimes like we're beatboxing or we're rapping, or like we do it just because it's fun. But sometimes you record it and then you listen back and you're like, that's actually really cool. And so that's where Brett stepped in and said, well, I'm going to start building some of this into these songs. Yeah. I love the way the album starts, Time Silent Radio 7, which is the radio wave song. Yeah. That whole concept of like trying to dial in an old fashioned radio. And for any of us who grew up listening to radio, that's how you always had to find your station, right? Sometimes it was in between the stations with the better reception. So you had to dial it in. And then when you got it, you were like, don't move. right? Like just leave the dial where it is, right? I want to hear what they're saying. And I love how it's a great way for everyone to be welcomed into those 7 songs, which are a little more accessible. They're shorter. Yeah, it's just cool.
I always look at it like with songs. I think of it more like with those sounds like cinematic kind of a thing where you're just trying to heighten emotions and set a scene. It's more of a visual tapestry, and I did a lot of that on this record. Like Chris said at the beginning of Radio Waves, just trying to find things and put them together. There's Easter eggs in those moments and throughout. They just, like I said, they add a dimension, a cinematic quality to things that I think that I'm drawn to, at least. So that's why.
Well, and then it becomes part of that experience forever. Every time you put that song on, you listen for that part, even though it might just be a sound effect. And like Jordan said, it's art in its own self. Like that's who we are. We are artists. And so the music we put out includes all this because it's all part of the big picture that hopefully people will listen to this album 5 days from now, 5 years from now, 50 years from now, and might still be getting something out of it. Just like the albums we all go back to where you're like, how come I can't stop listening to this? It's like, well, something about it makes me love it.
Mm. And you mentioned, sorry, right.
No, just to get back to some of the sound bites on the Windows album, the song When Sunday Spills, that is actually My Neighbors, the beginning and the end of the song. That's them. So
and that's
a real life.
That was your daily hell.
Yeah.
The movie. It's disturbing. It's disturbing.
Yes.
I remember putting that
disturbing.
In. Yeah, it's great. And the ending too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's a beautiful song. And I think that the fact that that's real is just kind of adds to it. But, and I wanted, you mentioned, Chris, about rapping, because I just thought of the Water on Our Hands, which goes so hard. Like that little, like, I don't know the lyrics. It's like, the rapping part, but yeah, it's awesome. I don't know what like inspired that,
Well,
yeah.
that was Ray.
It was just more of a creepy spoken word kind of thing, like somebody whispering in your ear.
Yeah,
it's the way I try to approach it.
When
both parts are different, but what's that, Chris?
I love the line when the hook is set. Yeah. That part. It's great.
When Glenn and I were mixing that, a lot of the production stuff, Glenn is obviously saying he's not producing this thing, but in a way that there's these production ideas in there, and that section was one of those examples of Glenn like, you mind if I try something here? I was like, go for it. And he put in some like some really cool stuff with like that bass distortion sound, or changing the snare drum sound and augmenting it with this low end weight on there, just to give it a vibe to fill some of the beautiful space that was happening there, because it could be done. And that's one of my favorite parts there that you mentioned, where Ray's sort of speaking and singing and all that production stuff in there that Glenn put in, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
That part of the song will get you a speeding ticket. Like that, to drive faster. It's an awesome section.
Yes, absolutely. I guess you've probably been asked this question a lot, and I'm just curious for all of you, like, what are your, I guess, musical influences, and how do you channel that into this band? Like, what is your contribution, I guess? Yeah.
Jordan, you want to go first?
Not really. But
you want to go?
I mean, I listen to a lot of different kinds of music. I have, I'm obviously deep into progressive rock, but I'm also deep into jazz music, and gone to a couple different colleges for music and things like that, and kind of always have prided myself on not being someone who just plays one genre of drums, like kind of being someone who not can just play pretty much any genre, but does play pretty much any genre, So my influences span pretty widely, and like as I get older, I'm just trying to and I think we were kind of hinting at this a moment ago, but like I'm trying to dial into my instincts more and more, and make it less about what my what my brain might be telling me to play, what might be cool here, and just play what feels the most natural. So it's I could list off a bunch of drummers and a bunch of records that I like the most, but I think it's like uh we're all I don't know, we're all a culmination of our influences and the stuff we've digested, right? And this record, I know it feels like I'm avoiding answering the question, but I think I'm trying to avoid being cliche is what I'm trying to avoid.
Of course, yeah.
But um like when you're given the opportunity to just be instinctive, it's really awesome. And everybody sitting here gave me that opportunity with all this music, and that's really awesome for me as a drummer and as a contributing member to the music. But yeah, like I said, I'm happy to list off all the drummers that everybody always names that they love the most. But that I don't know, that sentiment felt important to mention to that question.
Definitely.
Glenn, how about you, man? Your early influences.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I would say that Jordan is correct because I could
What?
absolutely list, 1,000 records that I listened to as a kid. And, I've, you know, without making it about me, I mean, I've done over 300 albums over the course of my career. Every single one of those has had to have deep influence, whether it was a reggae record or a punk record or a progressive rock record or uh, all of that kind of stuff gets into that stew of who we are. One of the things, though, and I think Jordan probably would feel the same way, is to be able to use that as almost our own personal encyclopedia and be able to bring something interesting or something unthought of into any kind of situation. So sure, as a kid, I listened to James Taylor and then I worked with James Taylor, you know, and again, not, to name drop it, but, there was a component of the way that Ray articulated his vocals in some of the songs, that were like, oh my gosh, man, I know exactly what to do here. I know exactly what to do here. He's approaching it the way James did when we, did that thing. So yeah, kind of like Jordan, I can name literally 100 records, take up the rest of our time together, discuss each one. Brett and I would go through these long conversations about exactly like that kind of stuff. But the reality of it is that the encyclopedic knowledge of everybody who was on this call really kind of is there's no one thing. There's no one thing. I loved Hendrix when I was a kid. I loved the Rolling Stones when I was a kid. I mean, there was just so many things, but the relevance to what we get to do together individually and collectively, you know, I think is highly influenced by just these experiences. So
Yeah,
again, I'm avoiding the question, not to sound cliched, but Jordan's actually correct. I think that that's a better question for a much younger person than me.
yeah. I'm going to build on the correctness of Jordan and Glenn and also say the same thing. It's if you think about it, Franklin, you're really influenced by, first off, your geography, right? I'm born in Pennsylvania in the United States, so at a certain time. The other thing that I wanted to say is an influence is the time that you are also born, and I was born in 1966, so I have in my young formative years an influence of that late 60s stuff on AM radio in my head, and that's still there to this day. I also have the 70s in my mind and body during those formative childhood and young teen years into my 80s into the 80s. So all that stuff is in there, and like these guys were saying, there's I mean 1,000 different artists and bands in every genre, from classical to jazz to progressive rock to pop, whatever. It's all there. So yeah, I'm not gonna say any names either. Ray, Chris.
I'm going to give names. I'll give four: Nat King Cole,
Nice.
Ozzy,
Nice.
Bill Lynott from Thin Lizzy, and Glenn Campbell.
Oh.
I would endorse all of those.
Me
That's
too.
There.
Well,
That was
Messenger of All's Right is kind of about Thin Lizzy, I think, right? Or yeah,
It is.
sort of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's about Phil. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's cool.
That's really
The
cool.
thing I will share, and this is just something that tends to throw people sideways, my biggest musical influences aren't keyboard players. And so, as a person who my instrument since I was 5 was a piano, and then of course it became synthesizers and keyboards and a Wurlitzer and Fender Rhodes and a Hammond organ. I'm not a big piano guy. Like, I don't listen to a lot of piano music. I love Oscar Peterson. I love Vince Guaraldi. Like, I love jazz and pop and rock stuff. But for me, a lot of times it's the instrument I don't play that is guitar players. So, like Alan Holdsworth, I love because he does so many melodic chordal things on a guitar that I'm like, one, that's sick. How does he do that? And then two, harmonically for me, I like that. I love Pat Metheny. I love Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, like the way he just gets sounds out of his guitar. So a lot of what I try and do is when I sit down at the piano, I always start playing a couple things I can play, meaning Echolyn songs, things from years gone by. And then I stop, and then I kind of just start wandering and searching and finding something new. And that's how some of the songs on this album came to be, that I had some ideas where when Brett and I sat down at the beginning and said, I don't even know if this is going to be an Echolyn project. This is just going to be us writing some songs. It's always more about go to the place you've never been before. And as soon as one of us catches each other going there, we're like, that sounds like something we've done or sounds like something you've played. So we're kind of good at keeping ourselves reined in and in check. But I also love being able to play something and go, oh yeah, I've never played that chord before. Yeah. And then take it to someone like Brett or Ray, or when Jordan was there doing, but we talk about it. Like, what is that? Yeah. And back to your composition question, a lot of times I don't tell myself what it is. I just let it be because I like the way it sounds. And then theoretically, when I go to write it down, that's when I analyze it. So what am I actually playing? Oh, wow. Okay. So that's an A flat minor 7 chord, but I'm putting a G in the root. Like, you know what I mean? It's like just weird things where it's like, who cares what it's called? Does it sound great and does it work? So tying back to what these guys all said, it's just always in search. I think there is actually a video of Alan Holdsworth called In Search of the Uncommon Chord. And I love that concept. Like, we're always in search of the thing that hasn't been done yet. And when we find that, man, it's an Easter egg. Mm-hmm. It's a Where's Waldo moment where we're like, we got it. That's never been done before.
Yeah.
So that's a ton of fun.
Absolutely.
The discovery process.
Yeah. You mentioned, Alan Holdsworth, obviously Pat Metheny. I mean, I'm a guitar player, so those are like huge influences.
Yeah. Gods.
Yeah. Right.
Even Frank Zappa. I have immense respect for him because of built bands around his idea of having fun, but also making music that had never been played or done before. I can't listen to 3 Frank Zappa songs in a row. I get 2 songs in and I'm like, I'm good. Like I can go somewhere. But I respect it for what it was, which was this zany, quirky sushi bar of music where you're like, yeah, it worked.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge fan and I get what you mean. Yeah, you want to find that new thing. I just want to ask how we're doing on time, because I have like maybe 2 more questions about roughly.
I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Cool. Thank you guys so much. Yeah. I guess I kind of wanted to ask a similar question to the influence thing, but instead of music, I want to kind of ask, and it doesn't, we can go however we want with this, but like non-musical things like media, entertainment, life circumstances, that's a huge part of your music, almost equally as much as like the musical influences, I would say, because of the lyrics and obviously how you convey your emotions in it. Literature, entertainment, all that stuff. Like, what are other things, I guess, that find its way in your music that isn't musical per se?
Movies for me are a huge influence on my playing, and not so much movies, but actors and their work in films. I think it's mostly in the form of I make this analogy a lot with my peers and with my students, but like an Alan Holdsworth, let's keep with the Holdsworth topic. Like, he to me would be like the equivalent of like a um who's somebody like a Denzel Washington who like only has so many notes. Like Denzel can't play anything. He does kind of one specific thing for the most part. I'm generalizing, and somebody's going to be mad at me for saying this, but that's always the case.
Yeah.
But like, but when he does it, people go bananas. You know what I mean? As opposed to like a Philip Seymour Hoffman who like doesn't always play the lead in the greatest movie of all time, but when he's on screen, even if he has no lines and he's in the background, somehow you can't take your eyes off of him. And no matter what role he's playing, whether it's like something super comedic in Along Came Polly or something like, incredibly dark and disturbing, like a lot of the movies he's made, like he just nails it and it doesn't matter. He can kind of just do anything. And I think a lot about actors' skills in those ways and their presence and their ability to like move their needle from side to side and play different roles. And I do a lot of sessions here in Nashville, and a lot of session musicians make this analogy a lot, where you're playing a character a lot of the time. I'm not just a drummer. Like that's too broad. Like you're playing a character in a song. And if you're someone who's so famous for your character that people call you to do that character all the time, then you can just stay in that one gear. But if you're more of like well, we need you to come in today and play this character, but tomorrow you need to play this totally different character. And then there's no right or wrong. I'm just saying, it's just one of those things that's always been on my mind, because I've always wanted to be a Philip Seymour Hoffman of the drums. It's always been my intention since the beginning. And like when I started to appreciate film more and actors more, that like I realized I was like, oh, this exists here too. And so I think a lot about that skill set and that vocation a lot as it relates to what we do artistically.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Wow.
Yeah, great stuff, Jordan.
I love that we're learning things about each other that we didn't know. Oh, it's cool. Very cool.
I consider myself the Carol Burnett of record production.
I always thought of you as a little more of a B. Arthur, Glenn, but okay, whatever.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
There's some obscure references for you guys.
Yeah.
Anybody under 30 probably is like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, how, but yeah.
B. Arthur, who's that guy?
Yeah.
Sort of.
That's great.
Dude.
Go ahead, Chris.
You got
Okay.
it. You got it.
I don't read watch a lot of TV, a lot of sports. Work for me, really. I draw 90% of my lyrics from work. I'm a certified nurse's aide. Worked from in rehab with a lot of patients coming from hospital, getting rehab and going home. And now I work in a locked down dementia unit. So a lot of the quirkiness, a lot of the craziness, a lot of the words I write come from them. I wish I could read a little more, but dyslexia kills it. I don't have the concentration.
Oh.
I'll sit and veg for hours, watching something, but I can't. I can't read. I can, but I can't.
Yeah.
Right. It's a challenge.
It is. I sit there and I try. I sit and I'll read a page, and then I'll have to read it over again, because by the time I'm done reading the page, I've already the story is askew and it's got nothing to do. I'm already thinking ahead, putting my own lines into what I think the way the story should be written. And yeah, I gave up.
Ray, how does that fit in? I hope you don't mind. This is a moment, because I never knew that about you, and I know you for quite some time. How does that fit into your process of music creation? Do you find it a challenge? Do you find it not a challenge at all? The music is so unique, and I never would have thought that it could possibly be influenced by whether it's dyslexia or some, do you feel like it's a place that it defines some of your style, or do you feel like it's something that doesn't affect that at all?
Well, no, it definitely affects it. unfortunately, I don't know, I shouldn't say unfortunately or not, but I normally start at the end of the song, which is hard, and I have to work my way back to where, to get a strong beginning. And thankfully, Brett and I work well together. So a lot of times, I can steer, well, he helps steer me out of those directions sometimes. But as far as like when we go to record, I won't have the words with me. I've gone over them so many times already. Like uh, one of my superpowers, I guess, if you will. They're there, they're embedded. So
That's what I was going to say. Because of that dyslexia, Ray's got an incredible memory, and
Sure.
he's got an excellent spatial remembrance. Like if you get in the car with him, you'll never get lost. He knows where he's going. He remembers everything. It's really interesting. So that the fact that he has dyslexia as a problem reading has created this. Like I can't memorize song lyrics unless I play them a million times. But I mean he'll just get them in no problem at all. It's hilarious.
It's amazing. Very, very cool.
Funny.
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt in the middle of this, but I have to run. I'm really
All right,
sorry.
brother.
Totally.
Okay.
Thank you
Jordan.
so much, Jordan.
Happy birthday,
Thanks.
Jordan.
Happy
thank-
birthday.
Thanks,
Wow.
guys.
Happy birthday, brother.
Thank you. Franklin, thanks for having us, man. This was really fun.
It's been an honor to speak with you and everyone else. Thank you so much for your contribution to this new album, and it's been wonderful to chat. Yeah.
You as well. Take care, everybody.
Yes.
All right.
Have fun.
Be well, brother.
Thanks. You too.
So, ironically
Thank
enough,
God he's gone now. No.
I don't know how old he is, but he's young enough that he pulls our average down. That's why we keep him.
Wow.
No, he's a great guy. You can just tell. He's
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Did he? I thought I heard somewhere he went to Berkeley College of Music.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a New York session person for years and years and years before he moved to Nashville, which I think he's been in Nashville maybe, I don't want to say for him, but I think at least 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
So
It might be closer to 8, but yeah.
is it? Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's toured and traveled all over the world. He's been hired for world tours. He was part of the Blue Man Group for I think almost 12 or 13 years. He's just like he said, he can do it all. And yet he's also incredibly humble that you don't know that till you hear him or ask him about his resume. And then you're like, oh, right, I forgot about that. Oh, right, he did that too. Oh my gosh, he did that as well.
He's one of the really, really best drummers because he was hired to play a show with me with actually through a band that Glenn knows as well, Gray Eye Glances. And we were closing out this venue in Philadelphia a few years ago. And the drummer that normally would have played in that band wasn't asked back. So I got Jordan in to play to echo what he was saying about playing with things that he and I have done. But he came in and learned a full 2 sets worth of music. I remember in the studio, he came in, he had his notes, he has an iPad, he'll just put it up and he'll just play the songs perfectly. And while we were rehearsing, I remember one of the people in the band was like, hey, can we do this one too? And luckily we kind of knew it, but Jordan did. And he's like, yeah, just put it on for me for a second. Played the song for him. He took some notes and we're like, all right, you ready? And he's like, yeah, counted it in and played it. No problem at all. I mean, and there's like tricky things going on in some of these songs. So really talented guy that knows how to do it. A lot of these Echolyn songs still, I would give him demos so he would kind of get the hang of it. But when we went and tracked the stuff, it was just like maybe 3 takes. And usually the first take was like amazing. And, I mean, I would comment like, can you try that maybe in halftime or something just to try it. But
Yeah.
it was all great. He has great sensitivity to the songs. He has a great memory, and he's a songwriter kind of a drummer. He's not like a basher. I always hate when people are like, oh man, these people hit the drums so hard, they must be great. It's like, that's not what it's about at all. It's about hitting the drums in the right spot in a consistent way with feel. We all know this stuff, but
Yeah.
he can do that. And like all of us, he's only trying to get better at his craft because he cares.
Yeah.
Jordan is a respected session guy, and the mentality for being a session player, as he said, it's more of being an actor in a role. We work, I should say, I work in a world that is densely populated by And the best guys, the best actors are the ones who are the most believable. You know, they can embody the role. I forget who the drama coach was that was so who taught exactly that kind of thing in the 60s where
Lee Strasberg,
yes,
probably.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
to and he would have gone to that school. Jordan would have gone to that school because he's completely credible in this environment. And yet I know some of the other artists that he works with and some of the other records that he's worked on outside of this environment, and equally credible in all of those.
Mhm.
You know, he really he understands the inner mechanics of how each of these different types of music will work together, and he can find the heart of that very, very easily. So
Agreed. Yeah.
he's a great match for you guys. No
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah.
Big
Yeah.
time.
It was a no-brainer. Like it's just he was going to play drums on this album, and most of it was just the distance. How do we make it work? How do we get all of us in a room together, just like we all came to Nashville to be with you, Glenn, to do the mixing and the mastering? Like all we got to do is make the logistics work.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of what we're doing right this moment actually kind of rolled into the making of this record as well,
Yeah.
and how this definitely is a record on a logistical level, not on a creative level, that could not have been made 5 years ago.
No.
The ability for us to work closely, collaboratively from great distances, especially in my part of the record, you know, toward the very, very end, and working mostly with Brett, but also having, you know, Ray and Chris absolutely weigh in and have a real guiding hand in it. I don't know how we ever would have gotten that accomplished with us all living in remote spots, but
Yeah.
and I don't honestly know what point I'm trying to make, other than to say it's great that the technology was around for us to be able to create this opportunity. There were a couple of other times over the years, and we don't have to dive into this too deeply, that we had expressed an interest in wanting to work together again. And for whatever reasons those might have been, none of which were negative reasons. I'm in another country working on an album. They're working on a certain thing, and never really kind of lined up for us to do it. We stayed in good touch together, you know, for many, many years. Like, we genuinely liked each other, and I believe, at least from my perspective, that I think we brought something unique in character to the game, but we just were never able to make it line up for 30 freaking years, which is, you know, kind of amazing. I'm definitely again beating them over the head, going, I don't have another 30 years between the release of this record and that next one, you know. But yeah, it was great that we had what we're doing kind of right now, but a little bit more suited toward the creative process, a different version of not Zoom, you know, a different version of an app that allows us to do it, and it really, really worked well.
Yeah.
It made it it kind of greased the wheels for us to get it
Yeah.
done.
Made it possible and made it doable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Franklin, to dovetail back, because I know you were waiting to hear from Brett and I probably
Yep.
sort of like our other things. I was going to speak at the same time Ray did, and ironically enough, Ray and I have a similar answer, and Brett might too. For me, it's my day job. It's where I work. I'm a teacher. I work with 6th through 12th graders, so I have 11-year-olds through 18-year-olds who come through my classroom. 468 kids a week. I teach 3 bands, 3 choruses, general music, and I love my job. And it's probably the most rewarding and exhausting thing I've ever done, because I give it my all. And what I appreciate about my students, who are considerably younger than me, is they keep me honest, they keep me real, and they remind me how important it is to give people a chance to be their best selves. And so, although I am a music teacher, that is my role, music educator, I love the opportunity to just teach kids about music history, about intervals, about rhythms, about chords. I play the music, I show them videos, I just expose them to things that they just never would have had a chance to see, hear, and listen to. Some of it's just, you know, Western music timeline of like medieval, Renaissance, Romantic, Baroque, Impressionistic stuff. But then some of it's also like units on jazz. Sometimes we do intervals and rhythmic dictation, and they're always like, why do I need to know this stuff? Who cares what a perfect fourth is? Who cares what a P8 is? And I said, you need to know this because it's also making you just a better listener in general. And so what I love is that aspect of like driving to a place where I'm sort of like a band. I'm a cog in the wheel. I'm one teacher that the kids get to see throughout their week. But there are kids who race to my classroom because music is the highlight of their day or the highlight of their week because they hate math. They don't like science. They don't read well. And all of a sudden they come into the music room and they love to sing or they love to play. So I love the element of getting to do that. And although it's exhausting because it's not a 40-hour a week job, it's more like a 60 to 75 hour, depending on what's going on. Because your work comes home with you. There's papers to grade, there's arrangements to do, there's concerts to prepare for. But I love that. And then it provides me a chance to then do Echolyn, which is my outlet. So I get to be with these guys to write and create music and be an artist. And then I get to go into school every now and then and say, so this past weekend, I was in Nashville mixing an album. I was in Philly recording parts for the new Echolyn album. I was writing keyboard parts with Brett and Ray and Jordan. And the kids, of course, want to know all about that. Like, I thought you were just my music teacher. It's like, well, I am your music teacher, but I'm also an artist. Like, I do what I teach and I teach what I do. So I love the synergy of that because, again, it keeps me honest and real. It's a day job, it pays the bills. But I also love what it does when I then come to be an artist because I'm constantly pulling from that well. That's constantly giving me new opportunity to be an artist, a songwriter, a composer with these guys, which I love.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Yes.
I guess I think that I don't. I guess it's life, yeah, that mostly influenced literature. I mean, I like existential things. I like human behavior. I think I've always been that way, curious about why we do things and the ephemeral nature of our lives. And I think that's been in all the songs that I would write lyrics for. And it's developed and changed over since my 20s. You know, I have completely different opinions and thoughts on it just because of reading and things like that. But I think those things affect me. And then also personal relationships, like anybody, the things that you're going through weigh in on how you write words and make music. I'm sure it's the same thing with you, Franklin, right? If you write.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I try. But it's a learning curve and a learning process. But
yeah. Like I'm not the kind of person that's going to write like a funny song, like a Frank Zappa absurdist kind of thing. I'm a little bit way on the other side of that. But I mean, I respect that, but that's not me.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. It's a little bit outside of my comfort zone, and as you said, I respect it. It's cool, but it's easier to just kind of focus on. I guess depends on the person, I guess, but yeah, no, it's cool.
I like like when you juxtapose joy and happiness against horror and hates. I love that and where those things and how we respond to those as people, and I find that infinitely interesting, and I think it's in a lot of the songs that I would be part of.
Definitely. Yeah. I think I pretty much asked the majority of the questions I wanted to ask. If there's anything else you want to mention, like I know Rise Twain, Brett Cole, you're in that, or any other announcements or anything else you want to make known. But yeah.
No, just thanks for you taking the time to do this. I remember, Franklin, I remember seeing you had a video where you were ranking, someone forwarded to me, and I was like, how awesome is this?
I
just think that's just so. I want to say thank you to you for even having us part of a video. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And then just interest that you want to interview these guys from Pennsylvania and Glenn from New York, and it's just kind of cool. It's really neat.
It's really an honor. Like I love your music. I've just been obsessed with it I love it. I just for years and it's kind of my thing. Like I don't have anything to share it with. It's I mean, some people can kind of understand why I would like it, but it's just I feel like, you know, this captures something that I hear in my head, like the music I want,
Yeah.
you know, and it's
Cool.
see that reflected is so cool, you know.
Yeah.
I hope your YouTube channel, I hope you continue with it and
Mm.
keep building on it. I saw a little bit of the Roger Manning one. And
Yeah.
it's just great. I mean, I'm obviously a huge Jellyfish and Roger Manning and Beck
Yeah.
fan, and you know,
Yeah.
he plays with a lot of amazing songwriters. So of course I'm going to tune in on it.
Yeah.
It's an honor that you would have us on with this,
Oh,
with someone like that. It's great.
yeah. I love to talk with him. I had to do a little bit more research for that. This I felt pretty comfortable with. Like, I know your music very well. It didn't take me very long to you know, I tried to didn't take me long to formulate things. But yeah, no, it's totally an honor. I mean, yeah.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. Franklin, what we appreciate too is that you do know us and our music. So to carve out time to help us get to more people who don't know who we are. Or even earlier, Brett talked about like we might take the end of Water in Our Hands and make a video to be an on ramp for someone who normally would say, I am not sitting down to listen to a 29-minute song. I don't have that kind of time or patience. It's like, well, maybe you want to listen to a 3.5-minute song that ends that song. And if that can be the on ramp that hooks them in to say, wait a minute, who is this? Where are they from? They've been together for how long? How many albums do they have out? What we continue to find, and we're doing it now with our social media, Facebook each week still has between 30 to 50 new people who like us and join our sort of musical movement. We just reactivated our Instagram page, which has kind of been dead and dormant. And already I think we have 30 people in the last couple of days who are like, oh, Echolyn's back and doing this again now. And it's all just about promotion and getting, you know, using the social media channels to get to people who don't know or who used to know and forgot. We noticed that when we were trying our Kickstarter campaign and then we did the PayPal pre-sale. People who were like, wait, you guys are still together? Like most bands aren't still together after 30 plus years. It's like, yeah, we're still doing this because we love each other and we love to do this. Yeah. But your help and support in sort of recognizing and knowing that, yeah, there's a trumpet to sound, like this band has music to share, but there's also millions of people out there who have no clue who we are. Maybe we can find some of them. So thank you for that.
I definitely think so. Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of kill two birds with one stone. Like I get to talk with you guys and I get to, you know, promote the music, which is, it's really cool. I think it's like, you know, it needs to be heard more. I think more people, if it was just more, if people knew of it and heard it, I think it would, more people would gravitate towards it. It's just, you know, unfortunately with especially with streaming, which has kind of added its own kind of obstacles, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But Chris did put it well, and I think that there is a ton of methodology that wasn't around for some of the earlier records that, you know, with this particular record, you know, they're learning what the methodology is, and certainly Franklin, this is an enormous help. I would love to see this record get, you know, a quarter of the recognition that it deserves. You know, I really would love to see that happen.
Grammy.
Nominate.
It's been a long time. I need another one, guys.
All right.
We have to join first. That's the first thing we need to do.
I'm still a voting member.
Are you?
Nice.
I think one of us has to join. I don't think you could get us in just on that, Glenn, right? I think one of us has to do it, and then we can submit it.
We'll work our evil.
We'll figure it out. It's the time of the year.
I like that. We'll work our evil.
That's awesome.
I think if we get nominated, I'm still hoping Jethro Tull still beats us.
Yeah. Vindication for them.
Amazing.
That's funny.
Hey, Franklin, this goes without saying, but for new people, if you're doing additional promotion, Echolyn.com is where to send them. I mean, obviously, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, but the pre-sale for the albums, not the fan pre-sale, but the regular street release pre-sale is Monday, February 3rd, and that'll be through iTunes and Bandcamp and a couple other sources. And then the album will drop on March 7th, 2025, which is the 30-year to the day anniversary that As the World was released that we did with Glenn. So it's a total full circle how we're going to drop this album 30 years to the day and give people a chance to either find us for the first time or reacquaint themselves with, oh yeah, that's the Applehead band, the one with the shrunken Appleheads on the cover. Yeah, that's us. Tastes like
they cart me out once every 30 years and put me back in the home.
Weekend at Glenn's.
Exactly.
And on that note, Franklin, did you say, are you, this isn't live, right? You're going to put this up sometime?
I'm going to put this up sometime. No, it's not live. Yeah.
Yeah, let us know. Let us know.
Absolutely. I'll send you a link and yeah.
And we'll promote it on all of our sites too, because that'll get more views. And again, it's a win-win.
That'll get it out to like 4 more people, I think.
At least 5.
Yeah. that would be yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Frank.
Really,
thank you.
Yeah, this is just I don't even though the views is super cool, I genuinely, this is like my own personal, just I love to chat and just and learn more about your musical psyche, I guess, and just learn about that process. And it's very humbling and it's an honor. So thank you guys so much.
Stay in touch, man. Let us know how you're doing as well with your music. Seriously.
Wow. I do have some music that I'm willing to share. I don't know, but it's
you have my email address. You can send anytime you want to.
Yeah, please. It would be awesome.
That's
artists have to scratch each other's back. That's how we continue to make our art.
Yeah. Wow. This is truly amazing. So thank you. Yeah.
I'd like to parrot what these guys are saying with a slightly different spin. Do not send me any of your music at all, ever. Whatever you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I understand. Yes. No, truly, thank you guys so much. And I'll try to stay in touch. Yeah, and I'm a fan for life. I'll forever be listening to your music and hopefully, getting to, spread the word. So yeah.
Go back and find some more of those Easter eggs.
Yes. That's my homework. Yeah.
See you guys.
Stay well.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you.